Today we will explore a revolutionary new theory on the purpose of the pyramids and how they were built.
Obviously, they reached a point where they said, well, we've got all this energy coming through these things, why don't we harness it? So they built the Great Pyramid, and they harnessed some of that energy.
I wanted to explore the subject of the Great Pyramid being some sort of giant machine. So I arranged to meet with British engineer Christopher Dunn in Cairo. The first thing I did was take him to Giza, where he could explain to me his theory of the Giza power plant.
In the Giza power plant, I questioned the theory whether the pyramids were actually tombs. And after conducting considerable research, I could not find any evidence that they were any original burials within the pyramids. Of course, that raises the question, if they were not tombs, what were they used for? What I did is I examined the Great Pyramid and did a reverse engineering study of it. What I concluded was that it was actually used to generate energy. And it generated energy in a way that was extremely holistic. It actually did more than just generate energy. It relieved the stresses in the Earth's plate, and it also drove the plate into harmony. That harmony then possibly could have affected the people in the area, creating an environment, an acoustic environment, that was peaceful and extremely beneficial to their health. However, what leads me to that conclusion are the details within the Great Pyramid. And what we have is a series of passageways and chambers and shafts. It was a study of the dimensions and the geometry of these shafts and chambers and the residual materials that were left inside. Also, the selection of materials in particular areas. In the Great Pyramid, we have a descending passage that goes down to a bedrock chamber, about 350 feet from the opening. Of course, we could talk about the precision of the Great Pyramid, and the precision is considerable. It is that passageway itself was surveyed by William Flinders Petrie in the 1880s. And he determined through his measures that the passageway was straight in the constructed portion to within 20 thousandths of an inch. That's the thickness of a thumbnail. Over the entire length of the chamber, the full 350 feet, it only varied a quarter of an inch. That is an amazing precision. The subchamber itself, I am now coming to realize, was actually using hydraulics to cause a pulse generator. It actually generated a pulse that drove the entire pyramid into harmony. Of course, moving up into the pyramid, we have the ascending passage and many unusual features that are found there, such as the granite stone plugs at the end of the passageway. They don't seem to have any real construction purpose, while the theory is that they were there to prevent tomb robbers from entering the center of the pyramid. Really, all they did was attract attention. And Al-Mamun, when he chiseled into the Great Pyramid in 812 AD, did so when he identified those granite plugs and determined that perhaps something may lie behind them. And sure enough, what lay behind them was a shaft. He chiseled the limestone around them and a shaft straight up into the heart of the Great Pyramid. Coming to the end of that small shaft is what they call a Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is considered to be an architectural masterpiece. It consists of corbelled layers, 7 corbelled layers, where the gallery actually gets smaller towards the top. Also, along the side of the Grand Gallery, we have ramps, and into the ramps are cut these notches. These notches are cut vertically into the ramps. There are 27 pairs of these notches, and as you go along the length of the gallery, you come to what is being called the Great Step. Climbing up the step, you have a horizontal passage, and then through the horizontal passage, a small antechamber, then again another small passage into the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber complex is the heart of the power plant. It is constructed solely of granite. It is tuned to a high degree to resonate at 440. It also emits naturally an F-sharp chord, and this was detected by an acoustic engineer named Tom Danley in 1995. The chamber is freestanding within the heart of the pyramid. It is not connected to the core blocks and is free to resonate and vibrate at will. Overlying the King's Chamber, we have 5 layers of granite beams. These granite beams, I speculated in my book, are actually resonating beams. They are unusually cut. They're cut square and flat on 3 sides, but the top side is very rough. The roughness on the top side, I believe, was done in order to tune the beams. Just like you would tune a bell, you would actually remove material until you achieve the tone that you wanted. The whole complex is like a musical instrument, and each feature lends resonance to the other feature. In the King's Chamber, we have a box. I call a box, conventionally it's called a sarcophagus. However, there have been no mummies, original burials found in any pyramid, and there was nothing found in the Great Pyramid, even when Al-Mamun entered in 812 AD. So the question is, what were these for? Also in the chamber are 2 shafts that lead to the outside of the pyramid on angles. These shafts, in the northern shaft, they have a 4.8 by 8.4 dimension. That is suitable for a waveguide in the microwave region, a hydrogen waveguide. In the southern shaft, the opening is shaped like a horn antenna. This is quite significant if you consider that a signal coming into that chamber, if that chamber contained energized hydrogen, that signal could stimulate the emission of energy, collect that energy, and feed it into the southern shaft. Other features. Well, we asked the question. If they were using hydrogen, where did they get the hydrogen from? Well, for that, we go along a very long horizontal passage to what is termed the Queen's Chamber. In the Queen's Chamber, you have several unusual features. You have 2 shafts, similar, but not quite the same. In the Queen's Chamber, you have a shaft leading from the chamber to the south and one leading from the chamber to the north. When early explorers went into the Great Pyramid, they did not detect these shafts. They wouldn't have known that they were there. The only reason they were found was because a man in 1872 by the name of Wayman Dixon was in the chamber and detected a crack in the wall. He pushed a rod through that crack and he got no resistance on the rod. So he chiseled away the limestone, and lo and behold, behind that plate was the shafts. He did the similar thing on the northern face of the chamber and tapped around and found that there was another shaft there, chiseled out the limestone, there it was. These were intentional designs. They did not cut these shafts and then just put a plug in them at the Queen's Chamber. They were a part of the original block. So the question is, why? Why did they do that? In 1993, A German robotics engineer by the name of Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a robot up the southern shaft. When he got to the end of the shaft, it terminated at what is called a so-called door. But the question is, was it really a door? And my answer is no, it was not a door. It was just a plate of limestone. Through this limestone were two copper fittings. So these were really mysterious. And why would they put copper fittings at the end of this shaft? The solution in the Giza power plant is that there were actually electrodes and determined when the shaft was full of the chemical they were using and mixing to create hydrogen. Now you might ask, why was the shaft closed at the end? So we have a shaft that's closed in two places, terminated 5 inches away from the chamber at the bottom and with a plate of limestone at the top. Certainly it wasn't for the passage of air for people to breathe. And even though you may ask that, why would a mummy or a pharaoh need to breathe if he was dead? So that was another mysterious question that we had to answer. So the Giza power plant theory actually proposes that both of these shafts contain different chemicals. A hydrated zinc solution and a diluted hydrochloric acid solution. These two chemicals, if mixed, would actually boil off hydrogen. The evidence to support that proposition was found actually on the walls of the shaft and inside the southern shaft. On the walls of the shaft, early explorers found that they were covered with salt, up to 1 inch thick. They have subsequently cleaned off the salt, but the salt was there. And that would be the result of hydrogen gas boiling off and giving up some of the impurities in the gas to the limestone. So the evidence for hydrogen is there. The evidence that a liquid was contained in those shafts is very strong. If you consider that a 5-inch plate of limestone, a liquid would percolate through it, whereas it would not pass air. In the east wall is a niche. The niche is cobbled. I propose that it had an evaporator tower there, so that the chemicals that came into the chamber were actually wicked up into this evaporator tower and gave off the hydrogen. So let's climb along the horizontal passage again, and we'll go to the bottom of the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is 82 inches wide at the bottom and 42 inches wide at the top, and 28 feet high. It's quite an impressive masterpiece. I propose that within the slots, the 27 pair of slots going along the length of the Grand Gallery, were resonators, a series of resonators that actually coupled with the pyramid, drew the vibration and converted it to airborne sound at different frequencies. In other words, at the bottom you would have a larger resonator and stepping up to higher frequencies as you got to the top. In 1999, I noticed evidence that these resonators actually were there. And that evidence is on the walls and the ceiling of the Grand Gallery. Because in the past, in the history, there was a disaster, a huge disaster. And what happened was I propose that it was either a comet strike or some external force struck the planet. This caused all this destruction that we find around us and what we have talked about as we have gone around the Giza Plateau. The cracked blocks and things thrown and jumbled all over the place are the signs of a cataclysm many thousands of years ago. Inside the Great Pyramid, the evidence of that cataclysm is around the King's Chamber and the Grand Gallery. With the use of hydrogen And also, if you have the introduction of oxygen after the casing stones are stripped off, you will probably have the conditions, the right conditions for that hydrogen to explode. The evidence is inside the chamber. The walls were actually pushed out over an inch. The ceiling beams were pushed up and they were cracked. So what we had was an explosion, the walls were pushed out, the ceiling beams lifted slightly, they fell down and cracked along the south side. Also in that chamber, the sarcophagus or the granite box is a different color than the rest of the granite. It is a chocolate brown color. And I propose that that too was a result of this explosion, that the granite box, originally a pink Aswan granite, was subject to tremendous forces and heat. And as a result, it's literally cooked like in an oven, changing the color of the granite. If we go back out through the antechamber and onto the great step, and if we look at the ceiling of the Grand Gallery, we will see the evidence of that explosion. The walls of the Grand Gallery have the evidence of a tremendous force, tremendous heat. And I'm not the first one to notice this. There have been architects and engineers who have been there and say that the walls are vitrified. The evidence is there to support the Giza power plant theory. And also the design of the resonators, because on the ceiling you have these scorch marks, very, very deep scorch marks. The scorch marks weren't very visible until the pyramid was closed for a year and they actually cleaned it. And those scorch marks then became very, very clear. And what we have are two scorch marks, a pair of scorch marks on both sides on the ceiling. Also along the wall there are scorch marks that form a line, or the blast pattern seems to form a line down, centered with the slots. So all this evidence comes together. But to sum it up, let me explain everything and how it worked. We start out with energy. That energy is the energy of the Earth. Seismic energy, vibration, feeding through the Great Pyramid. We collect that energy in the Grand Gallery and convert it to airborne sound. That sound and the natural design, or the design of the Grand Gallery, is such that any sound generated in the Grand Gallery will focus through that small horizontal passage into the King's Chamber. There, the sound actually builds and accumulates. It affects the hydrogen in the area, and then you have a microwave signal coming in from the universe. The signature of the Big Bang is actually a hydrogen signature at 21 centimeters. So there we have it. The evidence of a sophisticated, intelligent, brilliant society that created energy not in a way that is harmful to the Earth or the people that live on it, but energy that resonated, that was in harmony with the Earth. Generating the energy, they did it with harmony with the Earth and drove the Earth into harmony. We've just scratched the surface, though. I believe there is much more that needs to be found and discovered in Egypt about this lost civilization. We'll keep looking.
Chris's theory that the pyramids were some sort of power plants tied into the resonance of the Earth fascinated me. I then wanted Chris to show me evidence that there had been some sort of explosion that was associated with the pyramids. So if these pyramids were coupled oscillators, and in this cataclysm, some disaster, the pyramids just vibrated until they shook off all this granite, then for the later people who came here, the stones were lying just like this, just as we see them now, and then people were trying to quarry and split these stones, but they were already lying here scattered and tumbled, like we see them right now, right?
Exactly.
Part of Chris's theory was that the pyramids on the Giza Plateau were driving the Earth into harmony. So, I mean, in your whole theory, why these small pyramids? They're also just mini big ones, I mean, to do the same thing?
Yeah. Basically resonating at a higher frequency, but still doing the same thing. And the theory is that what they were doing is they were causing, for want of a better term, mini earthquakes. And it is...
They were creating mini earthquakes. Okay.
Mini earthquakes.
To sort of relieve the stress on the Earth.
To relieve the stress of the Earth. And so even today we're now talking about, say, the Cascadia fault in America, that where they're speculating now that if they set off mini earthquakes, then you relieve the stress in the plates as one plate presses against the other. Right now the friction takes over and they build up stress, and suddenly you've got a 9.0 earthquake.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you can relieve that, but with smaller earthquakes.
If you can relieve that, then you're going click, 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 mini earthquakes, vibration, which actually allows the plates to slide smoothly over each other, rather than building up stress.
But in your whole theory of like the Great Pyramid having a maser energy in it, but are these also have some chemical that's put in them, or they're just a pure geometric form on the plateau?
Yeah, well, the Great Pyramid is different, and really just the generation of energy is not the prime purpose for the pyramids. The prime purpose for the pyramids, in my opinion, it was to actually create harmony, to drive the planet into harmony and to relieve the stresses of the Earth's plates. Now, if you're able to do that, if we could do that, we can generate power for decades, right?
Just from the stress of the Earth's crust.
Yeah. The point I'm trying to make, David, is in our society, electricity is king, power, energy. We use it for many, many purposes. And we can sustain a civilization for so long. That whole civilization can be wiped out by an earthquake, by a huge uplift in the Earth's crust. Can just totally destroy everything, billions and billions of dollars.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yes.
Just the tectonic plate shift that we can't control it now, but if we could control it,
yes,
we could harness power, and these pyramids could do that.
Bingo. You got it. That's it. That's what they were for.
Fascinating, fascinating.
And so you go from, you not only have the smaller pyramids, or the larger pyramids, but you have the different frequencies to match with different frequencies in the Earth. Because the Earth is a jumble of frequencies. They detected the hum of the Earth in 1998. And the hum is very, very, really sub frequencies with a whole jumble of different frequencies. So, the Great Pyramid resonates still in the King's Chamber to 440. It resonates to an F-sharp chord, as Tom Danley detected in 1995.
Okay.
And my theory is that energy is still being channeled through the pyramid.
Through the pyramid, right.
And of course, the King's Chamber is a structure that's freestanding within the center of the pyramid. It's not dampened by the walls. It's not connected to the core masonry. The floor is not dampened because it's suspended on nodes. The upper relieving chambers, there are 5 layers of them. Why?
Why?
You know,
Right,
and
right.
the whole purpose is harmonics and resonance. So what we have is a progression, and these were important for the relieving of the Earth's stress. And so was the Great Pyramid. However, obviously they reached a point where they said, well, we've got all this energy coming through these things, why don't we harness it? So they built the Great Pyramid, and they harnessed some of that energy.
Join us on our next episode, where we go to Peru to search for ancient technology.